So it's been 6 months, well over 6 months, since our last foray inside Dark Dungeons. And the reality is, I was tasked with reviewing a certain tabletop RPG by its creator, as a matter of fact, and it's so bad. It is honestly the worst tabletop RPG to have ever cursed my hands. And I played Dread, the last book of Pandemonium. This is not hyperbole. It is dreadfully bad. But if I had to suffer through it, I'm gonna show you. And you have to suffer with me. I'm gonna tell you why it's bad. I'm gonna show you a couple of examples. I'm gonna explain why this is by far the worst tabletop RPG of all time. It's just...
俺は許されたいんだと思う。うん、俺は許されたい。
The name of that game is Sons of Arcadia. Wait a minute. Why is there an apostrophe in sons? Seriously though, that's a possessive. So, of Arcadia belongs to son? If so, who is son? Now bear with me, this is not a minor nitpick. See, tabletop RPGs are as much of the presentation as they are of the mechanics. Take for example the Fantasy Flight game Star Wars RPG. Those games are utter hogwash. However, the presentation is top notch. That's why they keep selling so many copies. Of is a preposition. Prepositions do not go after possessive s. Alright, that's enough of the edumaction talk. So, this book was released back in 2016, though it's been in development since 1999. Though if you read it, you really wouldn't think so. So many years, and that's what they have to show for it?
10 years, and nothing to show for it.
Its author, Pedro Mojica, has been into tabletop RPG since 1992, and he took the daunting task by himself to write a whole tabletop RPG system. And, come on, ARMR, you can get through this. It's only been 6 months. You're better than this. Now, if you've been paying attention, you'll realize that every time I'm not in the shot, all I'm showing is the book's front or back cover. Now, riddle me this, dear adventurer. What's one of the most important parts of a tabletop RPG book? Go on, I'll wait. Why are you answering? Anyways, it's the art. And here, there's none. Alright, so that's not entirely true. There are some bust shots of the races, but that's it. So from now on, I'm using some free stock art I found on DriveThruRPG that can be used in commercial projects. There, much better. Now, not only is the lack of art jarring, take a look at this, and I really hope the camera can look at this properly. You notice the problem here? Since time immemorial, tabletop RPGs have followed a very similar pattern when it comes to the formatting. And that's the double column format that so many other tabletop RPGs follow. This book doesn't. It almost looks like a college textbook. Not only that, its tables lack tables. And sadly, it lacks an index. Not that will be of much help. Not much help in my book, at least. See, it was part of the first printing, And the first printing had a really big and glaring error. The pages don't have numbers. I heard that in the following printing editions, they do fix the whole page number issue. But, again, first impressions, this book's really getting on my nerves. So, if there's one good thing I can say about the book is, I like the cover art. No, like, really, I do. The cover art actually looks kind of nostalgic, almost as if I was holding a Super Nintendo cartridge or something like that. It's pixelated. I understand that could put off a lot of people, but to me it's very pleasing and homey. Alright, I'm gonna come out and say it. This book is just straight out unplayable. It is. Just the grammatical errors it has, the problems with the English in it, you just can't play it properly. And it took me about a whole week of rereading to finally understand that you need 3d6 to actually play this game. So it uses the whole bell curve thing with the die, except it doesn't really make use of the bell curve. Now excuse me for getting technical again, but when you have a bell curve in a tabletop RPG, most of your rolls will fall in the middle area, so in this case 9 through 11. But the game gives no real benefits or penalties for getting a perfect 18 or a 3. So no critical success or critical failure system in a game that uses a bell curve. That's a really big missed opportunity. Sure, when you get a perfect 18 in combat, it's an auto hit and it's a critical hit. And when you get a 3 on the dice, it's an automatic failure, but no big penalty. See, the issue with the bell curves is, to get an 18, it's really rare, and to get a 3 is equally as rare to do so. So why why use the bell curve if you're not gonna make use of it? Not that you would know any of that by reading the whole how to play section. Now chapter 1 titles the basics. It begins with important keywords for the game, something you will be referencing often as you read this damn book. And it has too many in-game terms, followed by alignments that the game makes no use of. They're just there to help you roleplay. Then we have size for creatures, and it mentions the small size characters occupy half a square, though the how to play section doesn't make mention of squares. The chapter ends giving us a rundown of all the ability scores or stats in Sons of Arcadia. So you might be wondering, why am I then holding Anima Beyond Fantasy? Well, a sure clear sign of a really bad tabletop RPG is too many ability scores. See, Anima has 9. And some of them are a bit redundant and confusing. See, you have power and willpower here. Now there is another tabletop RPG that also has 9. And that is World of Darkness. A really popular one at that. And World of Darkness, while it also has 9, it's really well organized. You have 3 physical, 3 mental, and 3 social ability scores. So it's really well made, really well organized, not confusing at all. So that means that probably hell is freezing over if I'm giving World of Darkness a compliment. Try to guess how many are in this little book. I hear you say 12, 15, 19, 21 goddamn ability scores. 21 stats! And they're not well organized. You have body points, you have hit points, you have so many things to keep track of. The micromanagement here is just so overwhelming. You need a spreadsheet to be able to fucking play this game. Chapter 2 is all about combat, and here's an interesting one. If you go out of range in battle, you have to roll initiative again to re-enter the battlefield. Even though the game doesn't tell you how far away is leaving the battlefield. So like, when you re-enter, is it like the world warps around you like a JRPG? What does it even mean to re-enter the battlefield? See, the game is not clear at all when it comes to that. Alright, so combat is handled with opposed rolls. So when you roll an attack, somebody rolls an opposed defense check, which is very reminiscent as well of Anima Beyond Fantasy. And when you have opposed rolls like these in combat, it really bogs down combat and it makes combat sluggish and slow. Why not have a target number you're gonna roll against? It's a lot more simple than just I roll, then I have to wait for the Game Master to roll, compare the numbers, and then decide how much damage is dealt. It's a little bit too much. Then, another problem that's in that chapter, there's a mechanic called recovery that tells you how much HP you recover per turn. The recovery mechanic description is repeated twice in the combat chapter on opposing pages. So you see recovery here, and then a little bit more of other stuff, and then recovery again. Then for some reason, the melee combat section ends with something about range combat. Then you have the recovery mechanic, and then it goes into the range combat subchapter. It's like a shoot-to-loy monster from the Understars designed this thing. Chapter 3 talks about how powers work, but it doesn't give you a list of powers. That's in another chapter near the end of the book. Chapter 4 is about skills. Each skill is tied to an ability score, and there are 7 skills in total. Depending on your ability score rank, you unlock and learn different abilities for your skills, which is admittedly nifty. And then Chapter 5 is talent ranks. But I have no idea what talents are or how you get them. See, the game doesn't really explain that. Nothing in the book tells you what they do. But it does tell you that each has a max of 10 ranks, except when you go to read the talents, you found out that 2 of them, their max is 5 ranks. Chapter 6 is passive rules, so it's more shit the Game Master has to keep track of. Then Chapter 7 is class rules, but it doesn't have the classes in it. It just gives you some random rules that the classes possess. But the class section comes way later in the book. Then Chapter 8 is carrying capacity, and that's just it. It's 1 page, 1 chapter is 1 page long, just carrying capacity. Then Chapter 9 is a bit about terrain rules and how the different terrains affect combat, though for some fuck off reason, that chapter has rules for stress in the terrain section. Then Chapter 10 is character rules. It has a part that is called personalities. It has no mechanical impact at all. It's just to help you roleplay. Then it continues with 52. Guys, 52 different racial personalities. Just 4 pages full of words and paragraphs and lines and lists with no breaks, no pictures. Then the chapter just ends with some rules for a single class. Out of nowhere! Chapter 11 is all about creating monsters. It gives you a base stat for all creature types and races. The descriptions are funny because some races are hybrids of other hybrid races. So it's like a double hybrid. As you can imagine, it's a fucking mess. You get the recovery score for a creature, you gotta divide a fraction. For fuck's sake, divide a fraction? Who the hell divides fractions in this day and age? It's horrible. Now, Chapter 12 has a couple of extra rules, so more stuff for the Game Master to keep track of. For some reason, it ends with the monster record sheet, you know, like the character sheet for the monster, but it's not in Chapter 11, where you have the monster creation section. The monster sheet is then in Chapter 12. Then there's one about suffocation. See, when you suffocate, you have to first roll to see if you begin suffocating. If you fail that roll, then you roll to see if you die from suffocation. Now, that's the interesting one. Because the dice challenge, the DC, what you have to roll on 3 D6s to not suffocate is a 2. On 3 D6, you have to roll 2. Please tell me you understand the problem here. On 3 D6, on 3 6-sided dice, on 3 of them, on 3 of these, you have to roll 2. On 3, 2. On 3, 2, 2. You can't roll 2 on 3d6 unless you're using a Euclidean die. But we're not. Now, don't let the title of Chapter 13 fool you. It's called Campaign Setting, but the game doesn't have a campaign setting. It just gives you a vague idea of how to make your own campaign setting. Give you a couple of guidelines to follow through to fulfill your own campaign setting. Though it does it poorly. Chapter 14. Character creation. The thing that you need the most to run and play a tabletop RPG. Characters. You get it in chapter 14 of this book. This book has 18 chapters. Or 19, I don't remember. But chapter 14 is where you get to the character creation section. And it has a guide. How to build your character. But it's one of the worst guides I've ever read. Because it gives you a guide. It tells you what to do. But it doesn't tell you where to do it. And it doesn't give you examples. Pick a race. Pick a class. Pick the numbers of your race and put them there. Doesn't tell you what the character sheet is. Doesn't tell you what part of the character sheet to fill them. It just expects you to know. It just expects you to absorb metaphysically the knowledge contained within this book or something. In other games, usually the first chapter, beyond the examples of play or the introduction, is character creation. How can you expect people to read through the whole freaking thing with a bunch of weird rules that they don't understand and then go to character creation? That's sloppy. This thing is sloppy. This is the leper race. Why would you ever want to play a leper? Well, if you read the race description, you'll find out that these guys are basically the accursed undead from Dark Souls. And guys, the references don't stop there. There's a class called Cinder Knight. Try to guess what that one's about. Did you guess Dark Souls? Because you're correct. It has powers with flames and lightning, even resurrection. It even has an ability called Soul of Lothlorien. Lothlorien. I mean, this is not subtle. Now there's a class called Order Knight. And those guys, one of their first powers is they get a combat cross. A combat cross. And it tells you the combat cross is basically a Morning Star whip. A Morning Star whip. And they deal a lot more damage to undead. So, Vampire Killer Castlevania, yay, is the Belmont class. I mean, references and role-playing games is not a new thing, but still, minor callbacks is one thing, but blatant rip-off is another. And I'll be honest, dear adventurers, I have not read all the classes contained within this book. I can't. I'm pretty sure I would have found more references, but that was just me flipping through the book and going, oh, let me read this. What's that? Huh, that's an interesting name for a class. References. Chapter 15 is about equipment. Each piece of equipment tells you what class can use it, though the game doesn't tell you or makes a mention of what happens if your class can't equip a piece of equipment, but you still do. It's not like in other games that it tells you get a penalty. This game doesn't say anything. I mean, at least tell me that you're physically unable, that you equip and it just falls off you. Make it cartoony, why don't you? At least it's better than nothing. Chapter 16 covers forging. And although it gives you something else to do, and it has very expansive rules, it's honestly needlessly complicated, and it has just too many variables. Maybe if the game concentrated just on that, it would have made it a lot better. So, chapter 16. Wait,
Again?
another chapter 16? Could this be an error? Yes, it's an error. This whole damn book is an error. It's a stain non-existent. Alright, so chapter 17, I guess. Details elite classes. Now, elite classes are basically prestige classes that characters can pick that expand upon their previous classes. So, I'll give them this. It's options. You have options. You have a fuckload of options in this book. But it just... they're handled so poorly. Chapter 18. Ah, see? I told you it was a mistake. This chapter details deities. So the tabletop RPG without a setting suddenly gives you details on different deities and what they do. And there are even pagan deities. Although, the book makes no mention on the difference between regular and pagan deities. Joy! Chapter 19, the final chapter. Almost like the tagline of a really bad horror movie. Sons of Arcadia, the final chapter. It details extra rules. Again, it's titled Source Book. So it gives you a couple of ideas, a couple of guide questions when you're making your own character. And it ends with a pre-made adventure, which is admittedly a nice addition, although the adventure is not well written, like at all. Okay, so let me be real with you guys for a second. I support local artists whenever I get the chance. So when I heard that a local artist was releasing a tabletop RPG, I was so excited. I was so happy. Because I know a lot of local artists that they have worked for third-party publishers and even bigger publishers. But just the idea of a local artist breaking out and making their own game, that was great for me. I thought, yeah, finally, we're gonna make an impact, man. Sadly, the author bit way more than he could chew. Way more. He has no experience with creating for tabletop RPGs. He just went from a player and game master to publishing a whole game. And it's just really badly handled. The main two issues of this book are: the organization is horrible. You have the character creation chapter way past late in the book. The book has no real rhyme or reason for its formatting. It follows no real structure, and then the grammar is atrocious. And you might be guessing, oh, it's probably not that bad. I always give people the description of the human. Listen to this. Lore. Humans is a race of heroes and villains. Some say they're, not they are, they're. They were the first race to be born. But what we can be sure of, that they were one the first. So let me read that again. Some say they were the first race to be born, but what we can be sure of, that they were one the first. The human population was the first to populate the land and expand their knowledge, and upon doing so, they push other races and force them to their will. The humans is the most advanced race and allies of all other races, but because of their power, they also have become their race to defeat in order to take control. And there's a bit of inconsistency there, because the book also establishes that the Hawkmen have technologies beyond everybody else, so they're not the most advanced one. I mean, the humans are not the most advanced one. So yeah, the lore. There's another one here I want to read for you guys. And the book is just filled with things like that, that just the writing is so bad. Stuff for your extremities. There was one here, I didn't even write it down which one was the one that I wanted to read for you guys. What's in the game? Tells you what a tabletop RPG is. Man. Oh, so, yeah, check this out. The reason Sons of Arcadia is built on a medieval world, even though it doesn't have a setting, is for the players to form a party and band together on a quest to aid or destroy on a world full of dangers and monsters that could destroy their existence in every corner, and that is because the world is nor ruled by creatures who can speak and think. Instead, the land is ruled by wild and savage creatures who roam the land, such as orcs, trolls, dragons, and many others. Ronan sentences, have you heard about them? Man, it's just, it's so horrible. I tried to read through this whole book and I couldn't. I actually went through a nasty bout of depression last year because of this damn book. This damn book almost made me want to quit reviewing. I wanted to turn off my YouTube channel completely and scrap everything. That's how bad this book was. However, I did promise its creator that I was gonna review his book, and I feel so bad because the guy is genuinely, he seems nice. I don't know him personally, but he seems nice. And it's just a shame how bad this book turned out. You have no idea how frustrated this book made me, because I was disappointed, man. I actually wanted, I didn't want the next D&D to be published. That's not gonna happen. It's not gonna break any new grounds. The tabletop RPG market is small, really, really small. But I expected at least a competent product. And this is way, way too far removed from what competent is. Look, I read in an interview that the author is not really good with English. So release the book in Spanish. Anima released itself. It was released in Spanish in Spain first, and it got popularity, and then it got picked up by Fantasy Flight Games. And they made, albeit a poor translation, but it's a translation you can follow. This is unillegible. I don't care. It's just bad. Another big issue is the name, Sons of Arcadia. It doesn't really make sense. See, games like Fantasy Age, its name comes from, it's a fantasy game and it uses the age system. This game uses something called the crest system, and it has an explanation of what crest means. It's right here at the beginning, in the description of the book. This game is based on a game system called Crest, Cooperative Role-Playing and Vision System Tactics. A game where you will use various dice and a character record sheet, in which your character will be laid out for you. Yeah. So why not call it Sons of the Crest? Arcadia Crest. There's no reason for this to be called Sons of Arcadia. Pathfinder, there's the Pathfinder's organization in Golarion, so that makes sense for Pathfinder. I already explained Fantasy Age. Dungeons and Dragons, even though it gets a pass because it's the first one, but there are dragons in those dungeons, and you do go into dungeons if you want. Heck, you could have a dragon and have a dungeon inside the fucking dragon if you wanted. But Sons of Arcadia makes no sense at all, man. Anima, Beyond Fantasy. This is the one that is the weakest one when it comes to names. But it's Beyond Fantasy. So you can extrapolate Final Fantasy. It wanted to be Final Fantasy. That's what that book tries to be. Iron Kingdoms. That's the name of the damn setting. Legend of the Five Rings. The Five Rings are your ability scores. World of Darkness. The world is dark. I've seen a couple of people talk about this book before, a couple of local people, local YouTubers, and they say, oh no, but the book is good. Just have the creator tell you how to play it, and you'll see it's fun. Dude, if I want to play a tabletop role-playing game, the book needs to stand on itself. I shouldn't need somebody else to tell me how to play the damn game. The book needs to stand by itself, and this book can. I need that for the next gag. Look, it can't stand on its own. It can't stand on its own. I knew it couldn't. There's no way. No way. Doesn't matter. Anybody that does it, it can't stand on its own. Spoonie?
Betrayal!
See? Even he knows. Even he knows it can't stand on its own. It can't stand on its own. It just can't. It can't stand on its own. It's a bad game. It can't stand on its It can't. It can't stand on its own. It's so bad. It's just so bad. Can't stand on its own. Rule number 1. Always have fun. Always have fun. Rule number 1. There's no fun in this game. There's no fun in this game. There's no fun. No rule number 1 here. No rule. No rule number 1. No rule number 1.